Hello, everyone. I am Gavin Escolar from the Chaga Company, and we are here with Chaga Chat. We are actually with Lawrence Millman, a mycologist, Arctic explorer, and overall badass when it comes to a lot of things, mushrooms, and everything related to that. So, hi, Lawrence. How are you?
Hello, Gavin. Thanks for your very fine introduction to me. As you can see, this is only one of the hats I wear, mycologist. I spend a lot of time outdoors, and I'm currently studying terrestrial isopods, which some people call curlies or roly-polies. And they're absolutely fascinating, and they're utterly unaware of COVID-19.
Oh, tell me more.
It crawled out of the sea 300 million years ago onto the land, and they still have not gotten used to it. They have gills, which they breathe by. They need moisture all the time. And when it's dry, they congregate under logs. A group humidity is what's being created.
Oh, wow.
And they also, like a lot of things that live underwater, they're not quite tolerant of the sun. So you never see them lying on the surface of a log. They're always underneath. They like the darkness.
Interesting. Now let's talk about mushrooms. When and where did you actually fall in love with Arctic fungus and mushrooms and stuff?
Well, I actually did fall in love with Arctic fungi, or at least I developed a passion for them. I spent a lot of my time years ago traveling among northern native people. Mm-hmm. And collecting lore. I would learn all sorts of unusual things from them, how you would, if you're going bald, you just put a slab of polar bear fat on your head for about an hour and take it off, and then within 2 or 3 months, your hair will grow back. But every once in a while, I would hear something about fungi from these people who used fungi not for edibilities purposes, because northern people are moving around, it's cold, and they need a lot of carbs. And that's not something that fungi would give them. But medicinal purposes, yes. Puffballs, the spores, if you cut yourself, you put the spores in the cut. It serves as a styptic. It stops the flow of blood. It also has antibiotic properties.
Wow.
So, and then there's another species, it's a bracket fungus, that if you ignite it, it will smolder and it'll serve as an insect smudge. Far healthier than DEET.
Really? So chaga can also be used for insect smudge?
Yes, well, apparently the origin of chaga comes from a Cree folkloric character called Chaga Chat, otherwise known as Whiskey Jack Man, mm-hmm. who had a scab on his ass. And he didn't like it. It was uncomfortable. And he tore it off and threw it against a birch tree. And that was the first instance of chaga in the world. And I dare say one should remember this when one is drinking chaga tea. Then it is used commonly, or was used commonly, as a fire starter by northern native people. Mm-hmm. 2 pieces of flint or quartzite, spark, blow, smolder. Then you put dried tinder on top of it, and it would help that. And then also in Siberia, commonly used, both for medicinal purposes, and that's how it entered our culture. Mm-hmm. Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the cancer ward apparently wasn't able to cure his cancer at a hospital, but then some person, native or a medicine woman, said, try chaga, and voila, it worked. But chaga goes back in Siberia a long time, and chaga, in fact, is a Siberian word. Oh. The Khanty and Evenk people would often use it as a soap, and women who were suffering from menstrual problems would often take a bath in it, which would relieve the problem.
any other fun and interesting stories that you have experienced in the Arctic, whether it be mushroom or non-mushroom related?
This is a R-rated story. Fungus Man is the personification of a particular bracket fungus, Laricifomes officinalis, called, or otherwise known as the quinine conch. And it formerly was, I think, Fomitopsis officinalis. Anyway, highly admired in the West Coast. The Haida and other northern native people personified it as Fungus Man.
Okay.
And Raven, as we all know, created the world.
Yes.
Capital R. And he created men, but in fact, he didn't know what to do next. So he asked his highly intelligent friend, Fungus Man, what he should do next. And Fungus Man said, well, hop in my canoe and I'll take you to the place where you can find female genitalia. I'm not making this up. So there are any number of drawings and lithographs of this journey, Raven in the bow of the canoe. And they arrived on this little rocky island, and there were all these female genitals skittering over the rocks. Raven came and gathered a bunch of them. Then they paddled back, and he plopped them onto half the women, half the men he had created, which made the men look at the previous men in a wholly different way.
Yes.
And as the old man who told me this story said, and if it wasn't for Fungus Man and this deed, I wouldn't be here to tell you this story, and you wouldn't be here to be listening to it.
Oh, that is fantastic. That is great. In regards to medicinal mushrooms and our current pandemic, is there anything that we can take or any advice as a mycologist on what we should take to build immunity, or, you know, any regimen that you usually suggest with chaga or with something else?
My advice is that go outside as much as you can, and if you are interested in fungi, look for fungi. It will distract you from the current obsession with the COVID-19. You will not have to practice social distancing with the fungi you see. You won't have to wear a mask. You won't look at them and say, why are you wearing a mask to a particular fungus? And I think that that would be a excellent way to deal with the current panic. There's something else I recommend. And well, there are two things I recommend. One, it's essential that you purchase a copy of this book, Fungipedia.
Go get this book.
And it's a brief compendium of mushroom lore, and whatever questions you may have, they are answered in a non-academic way in this book. So let me go to the entry on medicinal mushrooms.
Yes.
Which in a partial way answers your question. Traditional people around the world have long used certain fungi medicinally. But what works in a traditional culture might be akin to snake oil in a non-traditional one. For in such cultures, healing is or was often inseparable from religion. And a cultural and or religious perspective on medicine adds enormous power to its ability to cure. Millennia of use might indeed give curative powers to a particular fungus, but in a non-traditional culture, only a short time passes between a person's learning about a fungal medicinal, his or her journey to a health food store to buy that medicinal, and the subsequent use of it.
Thank you very much. You could also buy the book on Amazon right now. You could just type in Fungipedia. It's available. And I think it's also available on Kindle. Is that correct?
And It's also available as an ebook. And
Perfect.
it's also available as an audio book.
Well, just get it.
So if you are, in fact, driving your car out to the backcountry and want to learn about mushrooms en route, voila, buy the audio book.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
Well, here's a entry in my Fungipedia.
Okay.
It's called mycophobia.
Uh-huh.
And for centuries, many people have had a phobia about mushrooms that is akin to their phobia about snakes and spiders.
Yes.
So here goes. Mycophobia, coined by British mycologist William Delisle Hay in 1889, this word refers to an attitude of fear, loathing, or downright hostility toward fungi. A recent example of mycophobia is the sentence, "There is a fungus among us," which school kids use to describe a bad classmate. Mycophobia is hardly a new phenomenon. The Greek physician Nicander, circa 85 BCE, called fungi, quote, "the evil ferment of the earth." The German friar Albertus Magnus, circa 1200 to 1280, believed that eating mushrooms caused, quote, "instant insanity." The great Swedish systematist Carolus Linnaeus, 1707 to 1778, described fungi as beggars. And the ancient Hindus thought that those who ate mushrooms were the most detestable of sinners. In his novel, Sir Nigel, Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, described the field of scarlet mushrooms as follows. "It was as if the sick earth had burst into foul pustules." This last description might take the mycophobic cake. Whence comes such biological racism? It's possible that proclaiming all mushrooms to be despicable is a way of preventing one's fellow human beings from eating poisonous species and, as a result, kicking the proverbial bucket. Also, such popular fungal substrates as dung and our own bodies do not exactly endear fungi to us. Then there's this last possibility. When fungi decay, their smell might suggest to us our own mortal end.
That's really true. Can you hear me? I want to show you these, and if you can explain to my people what this is. This is chaga.
You have a chunk of chaga there, and it's sometimes called the false conch, but a better word is sclerotium.
Mm-hmm.
The mycelium inside a birch tree is getting all sorts of nutrients from that tree, and the tree is trying to fight it off.
Mm-hmm.
So it's producing a chemical called betulin,
yeah,
which is not a healthy chemical from the point of view of the mycelium. So it's sequestering this chemical in a sclerotium, which is the knob, the blackish knob you see that you call chaga.
Yeah.
And at the same time, transforming it into betulinic acid, which is a known medicinal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what interests me, at least as much as that, most people think, oh, yes, chaga, that's the mushroom. It's not. The mushroom or the fruiting body is usually high up on the birch tree and is a whole lot, and that isn't it either. It's very high up. Mm-hmm. It's a little resupinate polypore, grayish in color. Resupinate means lying on the surface. Often it's under the bark, so it remains unseen.
Oh.
And it releases a chemical that attracts insects to come and spread its spores. And by the time the birch bark breaks, what you're seeing is usually something that looks like a moth-eaten rag. But that's, if it weren't for that, you would not be holding that chaga.
Could you tell us more about Alaska mushrooms besides chaga?
Okay.
What do you have?
Well, the thing about chaga is you're not going to find it in the northern part of Alaska because it grows on birch trees, and the northern part is more tundra. And the only birch trees are called dwarf birch, and they're not the sort that would attract the mycelium that produces this. But in Alaska, in terms of sheer biomass, because it's a very healthy place, less pollution than other parts of the world, the sheer biomass of fungi is as much as anywhere I've ever been. The variety isn't as much because you get more variety the more plants you have because the fungi are connected with those plants in a mycorrhizal way. Yeah. And I've been on the tundra in Alaska and in Siberia, and it's almost as if I could step from one mushroom to another without touching the ground. There's an edible in Alaska. I don't know that it's as popular as it should be, called the gypsy. And it grows with pines. And I once was in a place in central Alaska. I mean, here where I live in New England, I might see a dozen every fall. Yeah. I saw probably 10,000 of them. And it was all I could do to keep from breaking my back, collecting them and putting them into my rucksack. Another species, it's in the bolete family, Lexinum. Okay. They grow gigantic. Yes. One reason that they get so big, there are a lot of sterile pores. Think of it as being like a parka, cold on the tundra, windy. A little thin mushroom would not stand much of a chance of surviving. Yeah. But if something is hefty and has sterile pores surrounding the ones that are fertile, there's a very good chance of survival. So Lexinums up in Alaska, Siberia, Canadian Arctic are invariably bigger than they are down south.
And they're delicious, like a bullet.
Yeah, they're delicious. There's one of them that has, I succeeded years ago in poisoning my mother with, not intentionally, of course, but Lexinum orientaiacum, which has an orange-colored cap, has recently been determined to have various toxins in it that result in the sluices being opened at both ends, so to speak. They're not fatal, but they could lead to a very unpleasant night.
Oh, I see what you're saying. If you, okay, it just goes through everything. It will just go through everything. Just goes through. Could you tell us another short story from one of your other books?
Yes. There's a certain fad that's called radical mycology. And this is a slight parody. Bear with me, it's about 2.5 pages.
Oh, that's perfect.
And this is a short story, but it purports to be the truth. The title is Whacked Out Mycology. To find out how fungi can save the world, or if not the world, at least certain people's bank accounts, I recently attended the first annual Whacked Out Mycology Convergence in East Dementia, Connecticut. The convergence was packed, which is not really surprising, given that whacked out mycology is becoming an increasingly popular phenomenon. Indeed, Bloody Flux News, a division of Fox News, filmed all the events, starting with the initial hug-in, where mycophiles and their favorite fungi embrace each other. Here's a list of some of the presenters and their topics. The opening address was given by a Wall Street mycophile who boasted that fungal futures have never been higher. He illustrated this fact with a cladogram. A woman from a company called Egovative talked about how ego-based mycelia can be used to upholster upper middle class vacation homes. That same mycelia can also digest scientific scrutiny, she added. A vegan mycophile, he looked like a severed head mounted on a pike, told us that his diet consisted only of shiitakes and the occasional amanita. I've had only 4 liver transplants, he declared. An alcoholic mycophile discussed the medicinal benefits of vodka-infused chaga. These benefits are vastly superior to non-vodka infused chaga, he informed us. An employee of Fungi Impeccable Limited, you might guess what that is, told us that extracts from certain polypores can cure cancer as long as the person doesn't have it. Likewise, he said that his company's ergot capsules can boost our immune system dramatically by giving us spasms, convulsions, and gangrene. The founder of Stinkhorn Medicinals discussed the use of Phallus imputicus as a cure for erectile dysfunction. Uncircumcised men could use the so-called veiled stinkhorn, Dictyophrya duplicata, he added. One presenter recommended psilocybes, now that's magic mushrooms, psilocybes, as an aid to mycoremediation? What's the best method for doing this? Well, you distribute them to students in remedial learning classrooms. Cigarette butts are an excellent fungal substrate, another speaker said, and can readily host so-called butt-rotting pathogens like Phallus schweinicii and Serpula hematoides, thus preserving forests for human use. A mycophile with superior misidentification skills. At other fungal events, he was permitted only to set up and take down tables, showed us how to grow oysters, and illustrated his presentation with specimens of a certain saltwater bivalve. A voice teacher talked about how fungi will give us their binomials if we sing their favorite songs to them. For instance, most agarics like country rock singer Vince Gill and bossa nova vocalist Gilberto Gil, although amanitas seem to prefer death metal. In the Convergence's keynote address, Whacked Out's founder offered us this radical idea that fungi came originally from outer space, crashing into our planet in a UFO captained by a somewhat tipsy maitake. Or maybe it was a tipsy reishi mushroom. He wasn't quite sure. But whichever species was at that errant spaceship's helm, I highly recommend next year's Whacked Out Mycology Convergence to anyone who wants to learn less about fungi than he or she already knows.
That is hilarious. That was so funny. I really like it. From what book did that came from?
Sorry?
What book did that came from?
This story is from a book called The Mushroom Apocalypse. It's a collection of fungal fiction that I myself wrote. And all the fungal fiction in here is satiric or parodic. For instance, there's the Mushroom Apocalypse title story. There's a nuclear holocaust in New York City. And as a result, the restaurants are either closed or destroyed. And this upper middle class couple go out looking for a restaurant where they're both fans of eating mushrooms. Mm-hmm. And the woman looks at the man, looks up to the sky, and then says to the man, she sees a mushroom cloud, and she says, "I wonder if that's edible." And there are
This is mushroom apocalypse.
mushroom apocalypse, yes, and you can buy it from Amazon.
Yes.
Or you can buy it from me, sending a check for, well, postage and handling would be $20 to my P.O. Box 381582, Cambridge, MA 02230. And I will be happy to inscribe it to you.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.